remain standing for the reading of the Gospel. The Gospel today comes from the book of Luke, chapter 16, verse 1 through 13. Hear Jesus' story of the unjust steward. Jesus also said to the disciple, "There was a rich man who had a steward accused of wasting his goods. And the rich man called the steward and said, 'What is it that I hear about you? Turn in the accounts of your stewardship, for you can no longer be steward.' And the steward thought, 'What shall I do since my master is taking the stewardship away from me? I am not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. I have decided to do what so that people may receive me into their homes when I put out of the stewardship.' So summoning the master's debtors one by one, the steward said to the first, 'How much do you owe my master?' The answer came, 100 measures of oil. And the steward said, 'Take your bill and sit down quickly and write 50. Then the steward said to another, 'And how much do you owe?' The answer came, 100 measures of wheat. The steward said, 'Take your bill and write 80. The master commended the dishonest steward for acting shrewdly, for the children of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the children of light. And I tell you, make friends for yourself by the means of unrighteous materials, so that when it fails, they may receive you into the eternal habitation. One who is faithful is very little is faithful also is much, and one who is dishonest in a very little, so dishonest also is much. If then you have not been faithful in the unrighteous material things, who will entrust you to the truth riches? And if you have not been faithful in that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for the servant either hates the one and loves the other, or be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and material things. May God add understanding to the reading of this gospel.
Amen. Glory be to the Maker, and to the Christ, and to the Holy Ghost, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. 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 Please be seated. I don't know what to say about today's sermon, except it was not easy to come about. This reading from the gospel is kind of confusing to me. And I could probably pick out one line and make a whole sermon out of it. But for one reason that I use lectionary, I don't want to back down from anything. It's a challenge. And what I say today about this, I could be wrong. But it's my thoughts on it. Today's readings describe a sickness in public life, a sickness that evokes God's deep grief, a sickness that is much like we experience today, where the rich grow richer by leaps and bounds, and the poor have less and less every day. Jesus tells the story of a property manager who regularly fleeces his boss. Paul writes to a young church that must learn how to present an alternate understanding of truth in the context of an empire gone astray. All the readings assert that there is but one master, and that's God. Whom will you serve? We are urgently asked. And our decision makes all the difference to our individual and collective future. The gospel reading is just hard to dissect and to get inside Jesus' head. And In a Bible study maybe, but in a sermon, almost impossible. Jesus certainly isn't all about goodness and being nice. The dishonest manager is commended, but it's not a go and do likewise. Augustine saw the manager as foresight about the future, and Wesley appreciated the craft of a man and his stellar use of money. But what kind of sermon can bring those two together? Wesley's views on money would annoy most people. Jesus wonderfully turns our cozy expectations on back ends. Last week in Luke, we saw Jesus exploring lost, wandering sheep, fumbled coins. And we heard God say to us, although you may get lost in any number of ways, I can always find you. This week, we hear the tale of a wealthy man and his double-dealing financial manager, and wonder if God's reach extends to those who have been blinded by wealth. The manager, having squandered a chunk of his master's significant fortune, finds himself facing a bleak situation. He's going to be fired, it seems. And if he had the gift of management at all, it seems he's not qualified to do anything else. One leverage point remains, however. The manager sees that he has the power to lessen or even eliminate the debt of his master's debtors. Therefore, he has to give an account, before he has to give an accounting of his management to the master, thereby securing himself a new group of friends for the future when he will undoubtedly be unemployed. Surprisingly, the manager even praises what he has done, as well as Jesus. Jesus, who has narrated the story, preparing to enter into a series of teachings related to honesty and wealth. This is a difficult parable, if not from the first century ears of the people that were listening, but to us today also. How could the master praise the manager when he had lost so much, even if the manager had only lessened or eliminated his own commission when he adjusted the debt of the customers, which some people say that that's what he was doing. But the master's property still had been squandered. Moreover, how could Jesus follow the parable by saying, make friends for yourselves by means of dishonest wealth, so that when it is gone, they may welcome you into their homes? Is Jesus endorsing the behavior of the manager, suggesting that his followers secure the future for themselves by dishonest means? Jesus is somewhat confounding here, but not because he's given a wholehearted endorsement of the wealthy or their managers. Jesus goes on to imply that the master's wealth was filthy in the first place. And we know from other passages that wealth presents some sort of difficulty for Jesus. Hence his unsettling statement that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of heaven. True to Jesus' point, it does seem that the manager had a hard time behaving as an honest person in the first place. He was so accustomed to his money and to his possessions. He was not about to consider options like finding another line of employment or asking a friend for a loan or a gift. The manager was pulled down a slippery slope upon which one dishonest deed followed another one. In order to maintain a certain amount of wealth that in his mind at least, he could not live without. Jesus does not doubt the power of the wealth or the wealthy to alter the world for good and for bad. Certainly he asked the disciples to drop what they were doing and immediately follow him. And we know at least one well-to-do person walked away from him when told that he would have to give up everything. Still, as a good Jew, Jesus would have known from Deuteronomy 15 that wealth is not demonized, but the wealthy are morally obligated to help the less fortunate. Moreover, in Luke 12, Jesus calls the wealthy not to burn their money to cinders, but to be rich toward God. Instead of storing up treasures for themselves, and in the parable that directly follows this one, Jesus depicts a wealthy man being tormented in Hades because he did not use all of his good things and his wealth to help Lazarus, the beggar, to whom poverty had brought nothing but evil things. Against this backdrop, then, make friends for yourselves by means of dishonest wealth means that the manager has now, and has always, had a choice. He could have used the wealth, either his master's or his own, for the good of his master, for the good of himself, and most of all, for the good of God's creation, which includes the people that owe. The manager, however, let the wealth become the master, instead of making it a means to the master, or making it a means to God. Hence, Jesus points out that no slave can serve two masters, and that no man can serve God in wealth. In light of Jesus' call to first century people, and to us to serve God rather than our wealth, what shall we do? Most of us have money. Many of us have lots of stuff. People moving and rearranging stuff. No, you have a lot of stuff. None of us will be getting rid of all of it. We all have those material things that we are certain we cannot live without. Stuff that we just couldn't possibly give up. Maybe and only if we heard God say audibly to us, give it up if you want to be a child of mine. We might then consider giving up some of the things we have. But yet we discern what is our idol. As individuals or as a corporate body, we must continuously be on the lookout for anything that might blind us from seeing God and therefore hinder our witness. If we find this thing, we must be willing to let it go. This is the only way to become lost in a new way, in a redemptive way, so that you can be found again. It is the way of the cross, the way to lose yourself, and in doing so, find yourself. It's been said many times that it's more the reason, the motive behind what we do than what we do. And maybe that's what this story is about. It's the motive for doing that. If his motive was to gain wealth for himself, and he didn't worry about anybody else, that was wrong. But if the motive is to gain wealth so that you can help others, that's good. I think you pretty well live up to that in this church. We reach out, we do the best we can. I have gift cards that I hand out when someone has an emergency. We collect food. We collect art supplies. We collect warm winter clothing for those that don't have it. We're taking from our wealth and sharing it with others. I think that's what we always must do. You know, bad money can do good things. Someone who, I'll tell you a story. Pretty boy Floyd, does anyone know him? He was a crook, a bank robber, way back when. He was from Sequoia County, Oklahoma. That's where I was raised. And I grew up the first probably 20 years of my life knowing the sheriff in the county as E.W. Floyd, Pretty Boy Floyd's brother. Okay? But Pretty Boy Floyd was treated and was respected at home because he went and robbed banks, and you know what he did with most of it? Handed it out to people that needed it, to farmers and ranchers and poor people. Now, did what he do to get the money, was it good? No. But his intentions was to give it to people who needed it. And that's what he did. I have to let each one of you come to a conclusion about what you think about that. What does God think about it? If people are being helped, who am I to say no? I think we each one have to face that decision in our lives. What's more important to us? The things that we collect or the people that we help? Think about that.